Hey, welcome to Friday. It's the weekly sales wrap on the Elevating IT podcast. I am joined by my my co-host Frank M. Di Benedetto. I've had like 4 guests on this week, so I'm in guest mode. But you're my co-host this week, or I'm your co-host.
Yeah, I was feeling left out. I saw all these Facebook lives that kept popping up, but you were on fire this week, so
Yeah, we
got
got
to
a
go
lot of
back
stuff.
and listen to a few of those.
Yeah, they're good stuff. We had some cool guests on. I had Eric Bam on last week, who sells perfect crust pizza liners and pizza bags, like totally different, bringing somebody on like that. And then Randy Chaffee was on, who sells, he basically resells, and he's got a confusing niche, like we've got a confusing niche. Like IT is tough to explain. Some niches are easy to explain. Like I sell plumbing supplies, but he sells basically equipment that manufacturers will use to create things for roofing and for different construction. So he's actually a B2B guy in the construction niche. And it's neat to see them bring in a different idea to sales, than what we typically hear in the channel, but it's all applicable, which is cool.
Yeah, it's one thing that's always pretty cool about sales is that it doesn't matter what you're selling, right? The concept is the same.
Yeah.
And a lot of the theory carries through. And it's interesting to see, how you could take an idea that may work in one industry and adapt it for a different industry. Sometimes it's not something that somebody has thought of, right? Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it may not work, to your point, depends on what you're selling, if it's a service or a product and who your audience is. But it's a fascinating science, I think, because it's part art and part science, I guess. And it's just interesting to continue to study it because there's no magic formula, right? It's just the consistency and I think following something that's been proven to work because, like they say, success leaves clues, and and then adjusting as you have the ability to measure, the numbers.
Yeah, and it's talking to different experts, and we've got some folks coming on next week and the week after. I've got a person coming on who wrote a book on how to be understood. It's really, really cool. Just different perspectives. And what you find is that as you talk to these different people, you find that everybody's doing really the same thing. Everybody's building relationships. Everybody's asking great questions. Everybody's listening carefully to the answers and trying to fit needs with what they do, right? Qualify process. It's really all the same kind of thing. And it's all about providing value, providing the thing that that folks need, right? Figuring out what they need and providing what they need. Speaking of Randy's watching. So, hey, Randy, we were just talking about you.
Oh, Randy.
Your appearance this week on the show. It was awesome. We were just chatting about you. So
I also think what's pretty cool. I think I read the book. I think Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, and I think the beginning of the book talks about like one of the variables is the person, right? So it's the salesperson. So you can create different programs, and I think he talks about like he related it to the physical sense, and and I forget the exact analogy, but I'll use like swimmers. Like when you see Olympic swimmers, they all have that same body type, right? I don't have that body type. There is no chance I will ever be,
right.
An Olympic quality swimmer. So sometimes you have to play to the hand that you're dealt, right? Like you're fighting against the tide. You'll never win. Sales is interesting though, because I don't think like the physical aspect of who you are comes into play, right? So you can neutralize all of that and really teach just about everything and take that variable and minimize it down to what I would think is a constant, to something that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And neat thing is I picked up a bunch of little intricate tips, and I'll share those out on social media, and certainly people can go to our channel. They can go find the podcast, listen to the replay. The replays are actually in a couple places. You can watch replays on Facebook and on YouTube on the auditforit.com, Audit for IT Facebook page or YouTube channel, or you can just go to auditforit.com/elevatingit. And you'll have the most recent episode up there and all the old episodes, as well as the iTunes podcast link so you can sign, get to it easily on iTunes. But and one good example is just in talking to Eric last week, he was talking about how he prospects. And I thought, man, this is such an interesting thing. He's a B2C, well, he's B2B, but he's dealing with restaurants his ideal client is somebody that is delivering soggy pizza, right? Because his liners keep the pizza crisp. So what he does is he goes to Yelp, he goes to Twitter, he goes to the social media, and he looks for soggy pizza in a certain area. And he finds reviews where people are complaining about soggy pizza. And then he goes back to the restaurant. And now he's got a prospect, and he's got a reason to prospect them. Hey, look at this bad review you got. I'm guessing that he does that, but that's how he just, and it was just like a kind of sidebar that he mentioned. And I thought, man, that was really cool. And as I was watching the recording, I was like, I wish I had him talk more about that, because that was something neat. And those kind of ideas spur other ideas, right? Like you may not be, as an IT guy, you may not be going soggy pizza, right? But there may be some way you can go and look to see, I wonder if there's some way I can find reviews of my current provider. Maybe my current, somebody's current provider is giving bad reviews somewhere, or somebody's asking for, it just spurs those ideas, which is neat.
Very cool. Now you're making me hungry.
Right.
Is pizza not like the perfect food? Like, does anybody ever say like, I don't like pizza? Like, it's just,
I know. I unfriend them immediately.
Just to close the thought. So my favorite is, I like Sicilian pizza. There's a great pizzeria down here. Yeah. I like the thick, but it's not heavy. This one is thick, but it's like real light. I don't know how they do it, but that's my preference. If I'm going to order a whole pie, I wouldn't get that, because I actually think that when you get a Sicilian pie and you order, it gets delivered, it's like you said, soggy, because it's like steaming in the box, and it's right. It does get heavy. But like a nice reheated slice that's like nice and crispy at the pizzeria, fantastic. I don't eat a lot of carbs, but if I'm gonna do it, pizza is gonna be what I
don't know. I'm a thin crust guy. I was going to say, being friends with Eric all this time now, the past couple of weeks, is all I see is pizza in his newsfeed all the time. He's posting pictures of pizza. I'm like, dude, I got to stop. I got to unfollow you. You're making me hungry. And Randy's saying Hawaiian with extra pineapple. I got to kick him off the show now.
Terrible. Never put that on pizza.
All right. So I want to talk to you today about something that is really important. I framed this when I posted it to Facebook as one of the most important things, if not the most important things in sales. And that is asking questions, getting to problems, understanding problems. They're going out. And I've been talking to all my guests this week about it. That's why I want to talk to you about it, wrap that up. And anytime I get a sales expert on, I always love asking about that, how you get people to answer questions right, from good listening skills. And you, Frank, are a person who is, it's interesting. You're good at listening. You're good at asking questions. You're good at listening when you go out. I don't see that side of you, though. The side of you I see is, I know you can, you can talk. You're a good talker, man. I can ask you a question, and then I can kind of freeze frame the screen and go, do some chores around the house and come back in 10 minutes. You may still be talking, because you can fill the space. And that's not it's funny, but it's not, I'm trying to be funny, but it's not an insult. It's a good quality. And I think a lot of IT guys are like this as well. They can talk. You can get up on a stage, you can talk, you can, so how do you transition? And tell me about question, Frank, because I don't see that side of you in day to day, right? Like me and you, when we talk, it's different. So when you're with a prospect.
So just to back it up a bit, one of the things that I figured out a long time ago was, and you kind of mentioned like this industry and the challenges, is that a lot of times our prospects don't really know what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to confuse them and to make it very difficult for them to say yes when you're trying to sell to them, right? Or make them feel good about a buying decision. And so I identified that a long time ago, and I don't remember what the pivotal moment was, but I said, if I speak to my prospects like they know what I'm talking about, they're never going to buy from me, and they're only going to default down to price. Right. So I've always made it, I've made a conscious effort to try to talk to them using examples or analogies and throw a little bit of humor in so they could understand it. And I think when you do that, it doesn't feel like you're on like a filibuster, right? Like they are engaged with you and they're actively listening because nobody explains it that way. And it was a way for me to differentiate myself from my peers, right? Because a lot of them would talk tech and try to explain all the tech stuff, and they would lose them. So I think in the early days, I won a bunch of deals because I was able to talk at a level that they would understand. What I found was, and the reason why audit came around was that after I stopped talking, I didn't have anything that presented that way. So they wound up with a proposal and then trying to remember what I said. And ultimately they went back to price. So the audit report was an extension of how I would speak to them. Mm-hmm. Now they had a report that they could take away and easily understand without me sitting there. And then they could show it to their partner or the office manager or other people and not have me in the room, and they'd be able to easily translate and explain. So I think for me, that's always been the foundation is, hey, I have to understand. And that comes back to the curse of knowledge, which we've talked about in the past, right? Which is you got to recognize that they don't understand what you're talking about. That it's not that you're smarter than them. It's just that you've spent so much more time educating yourself in these topics, and they don't speak that language or maybe on that level. So with all of that said, I think that I just try to initially try to get them talking. Right. And, we talked about business reviews, and honestly, I spend, if not 50%, probably more than that, just talking about things, right? The family, what's going on, current events, sports, like whatever we could connect on, because I really believe, people do business with you and continue to do business with you because they like you, right? And they know you and they trust you. And that is what keeps that relationship sticky. And then you can kind of pivot into some of the tech stuff. So my first goal is just to get them talking, get them comfortable, and then ease our way into it. So I'll start asking questions about the business, right? I'll segue. So tell me about the business. How are things? And then I won't just dive in. Hey, I have this new product I got to tell you about. And now, we're a solution looking for the problem. I like to let the problem sort of develop. And then when I pair it with that audit report, and they start saying, hey, what is that? Like, we want to know more about that. How much is that, right? It automatically transitions into them wanting to know more. So my talking to them is really in response because they're asking me to speak to them. So I think that kind of encapsulates it. It's really just how you set it up. Get them talking, make them comfortable, understand that you need to speak to them at a level they can understand, and then with some kind of presentation, you've got to get them wanting to know more, and right. Then you hope it leads to a sales opportunity, because if done properly, they're going to buy something that's good for their business, and then I'm going to sell something that helps me run my business, and many times it makes it easier for me to do a good job for them, so my service delivery is better to them in their eyes.
Right. One of the challenges, and just to kind of, I'll make a comment on what you just said, is there's a time to talk and a time not to talk, right? Like when you go out, it's not as easy as just simply saying, don't talk, just ask questions and listen, because they're going to ask you follow-up questions. Like once they understand what you're talking about, once they are engaged and they're interested, eventually you do have to talk. So I think as a sales professional, you have to realize where you are in the sales process. The further you are away from that, because there's a point where you're going to educate people on the answers that you've gotten the information, but you can't educate them on your solution until you have understanding of them. So in the beginning, you're probably asking more questions, doing more listening. And then as you go through the process, you're maybe doing more or all of the talking.
I think there's a stereotype too about like an IT guy, right? Most people think it's the nerdy guy who's, he's like in the back room with the pencils and the pocket protector, and
throw raw meat in there every now and then.
Yeah, like he doesn't like to get out of the office. And maybe there is some truth to the fact that a lot of MSP owners are, because they're technical, right? They would prefer to be kind of in the ivory tower, not really out there facing people, right? So that's part of like what we talk about is how do you empower somebody who really is not a talker or charismatic in that sense? How do you empower them with a tool or something, or teach them how to go out there and start to do this? I mean, some people can sell anything, right? They're just charismatic. You just enjoy listening and hearing them talk, and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to buy something from this person. Other people right out of the gate will turn you off, and you just you're thinking, I'm not buying anything, and I can't wait for them to stop talking so I can end this meeting and get out of here. But yeah, I just think it's all about empowering, setting yourself up for success.
Right. All right. So one of the hardest things that people have, I think, is we all go in. You as a salesperson, you're selling your services, your IT services. You've gone into a sales situation. You walk through the door. You introduce yourself. You have an agenda, and that's not a bad thing. You're there to sell your services. They're there to buy something from you to get to the end game of becoming a client or moving on to the next provider and bringing them in to pitch them. As you have an agenda, when you're asking questions and listening, you're running through a mental checklist. And that can be a bad thing if you're not careful, because if you stop that person in the middle because you hear a keyword, right? Like you hear they say something, you get excited, and then you start talking and interrupting. What's your process? Because the last thing you always want to get all the information out of the person, ask them good follow-up questions so that you can terminate that line of questioning, right? You can terminate it and you've got the full answer, complete understanding of what they need and what they want. How do you stop yourself from jumping into the conversation before you should?
So I like to ask open-ended questions, right? I don't want the yes/no type questions because it feels like you're doing too much of the fact finding. So I like the how or tell me about or the why type questions. And I mean, people like to talk about themselves, so you have to just stay quiet and let them talk. And then when I'm satisfied that I've gotten enough information or I've got them understanding where the problem is, then I'll ask a confirming question. So I might say something like, so let me make sure I understand this right. And I'll restate like what they just said in like 3, 4, 5 minutes in like 10 seconds. And they go, yes. And then that signals, okay, like you understood what I just said. And then I'll just try to move on to the next thing. I mean, I have, a series of probe questions, because the whole idea here, especially with managed services, is to get them to be sitting on the same side of the table as you, right? So you want that to be a partnership type of relationship, not a adversarial type of thing where you need support, I do it, you pay me, and repeat. So the whole discovery process for me, while I'm doing the fact finding and trying to understand like where the issues are or what the issues are that they're going to buy on, right? For me is to really try to develop that relationship so that at the end of it, we both feel like we're sitting on the same side. And what they're saying to me is, how are we going to solve these problems? Now we're a partner in this. I say, yeah, let me show you how we're going to solve this for you. And that's the setup, right? So then the next meeting, of course, which is where we would present the audit report, is an extension of that. So now I'm able to sit down with them and say, here, let me show you what the solutions are to those problems that we mentioned. We might recap some of those problems. And then I think that greatly sets yourself up for success.
When you're presenting the audit, right, the audit report is unique. Walk me through a little bit of the process, like, because they're going to ask you questions when you turn the page. It's not just you presenting. Mm-hmm. Right? Like what usually happens? Like, how do you go from first page to last page? Like, walk me through the first few pages of presenting and how you're interacting with them.
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than people think, right? So first thing I always like to do again is just some pleasantries, right? Reestablish where we left off in the previous conversation. And then we segue, I like to remind them and say, well, listen, last time I was here, we did some discovery. We talked about the issues and problems. I looked around. I gathered some of the data up, whatever way I do that. And then say what we had agreed was that we would do a high level. In most cases, I like to do that 27-point audit across, the 3 different areas: infrastructure, cybersecurity, and managed support and services. So I say, here's basically the report. We'd like to do is run through the summary with you. And then we get to the summary impact page. And I usually don't have to say anything else after that, because as soon as they see that page and the color and the score, it immediately triggers a response, right? If I keep talking, I'll mute the reaction, which I don't want to do. And so
what's the usual response? Like, I don't mean to interrupt you. I
Yeah.
want to stay on this for a minute. Like, what are some typical responses that you get? And then how do you let that play out?
Sure. So, typically somebody's sitting there and they flip to the page, and body language wise, I will see them lean forward, because now they look and they see the color, right? So when you see red or yellow and some green, you immediately understand that, right? That stoplight mentality is hammered home from like the time you're like a teenager, I guess, and you understand it. So if this is being graded, that you want to see all green, and you immediately start thinking like, there's problems here, right? Even though it, when you see it, it changes it. It makes it more real, because a lot of what we're selling is not tangible, right? You can't feel it and touch it. So this is the first time that for most prospects, they're able to establish a tangible connection to that spaghetti of problems in their head, right? So now they see it. And then we don't leave it at that point. We score it too. I want to make it easy. I don't want them to go, well, it looks like about half red and half green, so it's probably a 50. I want them to see, oh no, it's a 42. And so immediately, what typically happens is they lean forward, which is good first sign. And then there's usually like that nervous, they try to like, there's always like nervous laughter, like, oh, this isn't so good, or wow, we only got a 42. Like they're trying to like, you could tell they're sweating, you're kind of like, this isn't so good, is it? And I'm like, nah, it's not really great. And then the next question is always like, well, what does the red and yellow mean? Like they want to know now, because it's like, let's rip this Band-Aid off and get right to it. So when I flip the page, now we go into more of the detail. But as you know, we keep the detail high level, so that way we don't run them into the technical weeds. So I like to roll it up. And now when we go through the summary, the green I go through quickly, right? Because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, congratulating them on, hey, you have antivirus. So say, oh, you have AV, it's great, leave it alone. Okay. But then we get a little bit deeper into the red, and I always try to connect that to the problems that they talked about, right? Which is why the discovery is so important, because if you go in there with your own agenda, no matter what they told you, and try to force all these problems that you found never connected to what they are feeling on a daily basis, I think there's a disconnect. So I try to associate with that. When we get through the detail of that, and it probably takes 15 to 20 minutes, I'd say, at that point, they're basically begging to know what we're going to do to fix this, right? And they're like, how are we going to solve this? And this is exactly where we want to be at that point, right? We don't want to be in the technical weeds. I don't want to be pulling out, spec sheets and going through tech stuff, because now I'm going to lose them, right? They're not going to buy because I'm so smart, right? They're going to buy because they feel like I'm the one who listened to them. I understood their problem, and now I have an actual solution. So now what we do is I go to whatever I'm proposing. Sometimes it's one plan, sometimes it's multiple, but either way, it's going to be a market improvement. And when they see that, again, there's another tangible moment where they go, this is what success is going to look and feel like for me. And sometimes it's all green. We get to 100. Many times it's in the 90s, and we may not address every item on day one. So what's funny is they'll ask, why is there still a red box or a yellow box? And then we go through that detail, and I sell them, and I get them emotionally invested in what their future could look like with us. And then right on there, it tells them what it's going to cost. And I like to compare the two, right? I say, here's where you are today. You're spending $1,500 a month. You got a 42. Here's where you could be with us. you get to a 91 and it's going to cost you $3,500, whatever it is, right? And then I stop talking and I let them just absorb that. And a lot of times they're like, how long does it take to get started? How long, like it's buying questions, right? How long will this take to implement? Will it be intrusive, to our people? Can we do it before the end of the year? Like those kinds of questions. Sometimes they might ask, is there any way to do this, but it, like be a little bit less expensive? And I say, sure, let's go back to some of those green boxes. We can turn some of these back red or yellow.
That's like my favorite part.
Yeah, I take it away, right? We can take some stuff away. It'll be cheaper. But I don't want them to think that, well, I lied about the price. Like, hey, if you buy now, I can knock 40%. It's not like that. You can buy less.
What I like about that, what that does is it makes them realize this is not an a la carte menu, or this is not something that doesn't cost something. This is a big program, and this all fits together to create this thing. So, and there's a connection between what you're paying for and what you're getting, right? Like that's the key thing is you're going, okay, well, let's take a look at antivirus. We can cut, this much off per month if you don't want that.
Right.
And now they understand like, oh, wait a minute.
And the cool part here is that, look, I'm not the only MSP out there that they could buy from, right? I may not even be the best. I mean, I'll even go as far as say that. But what I can guarantee you is that I'm the only one that's usually presenting this way to them, right? I make it really easy for them to say yes to me, as opposed to what other MSPs are doing with whatever their sales process is. So, I do happen to think we're really good. But like I said, we could win deals. We're not the cheapest, I promise that. Many times we might be and probably are the most expensive because we've learned, over time to make sure we're charging the right price so we can deliver the right service to them. But it's all in that process. And we've talked about it too. There's only one of three conclusions at the end of the day, right? It's either one, you're not getting what you're paying for. Two, you're getting what you're paying for. You're just not paying enough, right? You're just not buying enough of what you need. Or three, you're in great shape, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes I say, whoever your MSP is, they're doing a great job. One or two things here, go back to them and have them fix it for you and stay where you are. Sometimes if they don't buy, it could be a dollars and cents thing. Like, let's face it, it is a math problem sometimes. Even though I think that they can find the dollars, sometimes it takes a little time for them to figure it out. But we can continue to market to them. And we've had prospects come back to us and say, hey, we want to go with you now. This changed, or we solved our math problem. And so it sets yourself up, if it's a good prospect, for success, because you can still drip market on them and go back and hopefully close the deal later date.
I wanted to bring up in my preparation for some of the guests that are coming on, I've been doing a lot of research into what they do, and Ann Janzer, who is the author of a book called Writing to be Understood: What Works and Why. She talks about making things simple, and that's why I wanted to bring her on as a guest. Great book. She wrote a bunch of books, and she's all about really communicating more effectively from a writing standpoint, but it translates into verbal as well. And you mentioned a bunch of times about keeping it not confusing and getting into the technical weeds. And that's something we struggle with at Audit, right? Like some users come on and they see the report, they see what we do, and they go, oh my God, this is like exactly what I need. They're off and running. But some will come on and go, well, it's 27 points. I've got to do 127 points. Right. And our job is trying to educate them why that's not such a smart idea. And Ann brought up or talks about a study done by Daniel Oppenheimer. And this is a great study. It's called Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilized Irrespective of Necessity, or Problems of Using Big Words Unnecessarily. And it's really, really cool. It gets into the curse of knowledge and all the stuff that we've been talking about and what Audit does for our users. But I thought here's a psychologist who's done a study, and basically what he's found is that people who try and use bigger words in writing end up sounding not only do they not connect with that thing, but people who read and rated stuff with bigger words in it purposefully thought the author was dumb. Like it actually hurt their level of expertise because not because they sounded smart. So the person on the other end, when you think about it, the person on the other end wasn't saying, "Oh wow, I don't like him because he makes me feel stupid." They were going, "He's dumb. He's dumb. That person who's using big words is dumb because he can't explain it to me properly." So you actually hurt your expertise as an MSP going in there and being too technical.
There's like two ways to attack this, right? I mean, there's people that are a whole lot smarter than me, probably Anne, who has studied this, right, and understands the psychology and all the, the science behind that. And then there's the street smart, right? I consider myself the street smart guy. Like I failed enough times on the street to finally wake up one day and say, I just have to do something different. And, it seems to me like simplifying this would help, right? Then it worked. And then I find out, the people have been talking about this in sales books, right?
For years.
or figure that out. But you're right. And I think that for a lot of MSPs who use audit, they're the people who are still convinced using the big words is what allows you to command the big bucks and to make people buy from you because you must be really smart. And I think it backfires, just to your point, right? I don't know if they think that you're dumb, but they think like whoever you are, we don't connect, right? You're talking way above me. You think you're way smarter and better than me. I just don't get a good feeling about working with you. And so a lot of MSPs struggle with that. It's not only the 27 points, like I have to do 100 points, but it's also you have to prove to them without, beyond reasonable doubt, every one of these points is what you say it is, right? Like I can't just say it's yellow, and I can't just say it's yellow because, the warranty's expired. I have to, come in with, I have to show you all of the documentation behind it. And then I'm going to do that, 100 times to prove to you all the problems. And I say, and I've proven, and so have a lot of MSPs, you absolutely do not have to do that to win the sale. Is it a good idea after you get all of your RMM tools and all of your other tools in there to dig deeper forensically? Absolutely. Don't leave any stone unturned. But do you need to do that to get a prospect to say yes to you, to win a new client that's going to pay you $5,000 or $10,000 or more a month? Absolutely not.
Good stuff. Well, this is a great. I think this is a great place to end the episode here today. Definitely tune in for folks listening to this. Tune in next week. I believe Anne is going to be on the show. I'll tell you the date, folks, so I can tease this out. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up next week. Let's see. I've got Kel and Ann coming on next week. She's coming on Tuesday. I've got Ann Janzer coming on Wednesday, and I think I got somebody else coming on another day. I'm bringing on everybody I can bring on. I want to just get people talking about selling and sales and having some fun with it. So thanks for a great conversation today, Frank. And
thank you
for listening.
Always fun.